Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 3 transfer plans. I've got 2 free transfers, 2.5 million in the bank and a ton of things that I could potentially use those transfers on. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Before we jump into taking a look at my transfer plans, I just want to give a massive shout out to Surfshark as they have sponsored today's video. Surfshark is a VPN service which, yes, allows you to stay safe online, but it also allows you to access content from all over the world. As the Premier League is back underway, potentially you can't access every game and all of the highlights in your country, and that is especially the case in the UK. All you need to do with a few clicks of a button is change your virtual location, and all of a sudden you're able to access all of the content that that country can, whether that be highlights or the full games. Just as an example, let's say that you want to access YouTube highlights from a football game that currently isn't available in your country. You click a few buttons, as you can see on your screen, quickly change your virtual location, and immediately you can access the content from in that country. Amazingly, Surfshark have over 3,200 servers in over 100 different countries. You can access content from literally all around the world. The other amazing thing about Surfshark is once you've signed up on one device, you then have access to Surfshark on unlimited devices. So whether that be your phone, laptop, computer, or console, you can access content from all over the world and stay safe online on all of your devices. Not only are Surfshark sponsoring today's video, but they are also offering an additional 3 months for free if you sign up using the code FPLRaptor or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. It's a brilliant deal. It also supports me, and I can tell you myself, I've been using Surfshark for over 6 months now. I love the product. It allows me to stay safe online, but as I said, also access content from all over the world. So do check Surfshark out. Link in the pinned comment, link in the description. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's video, but without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, if you are new to this series and new to this channel, firstly, welcome, and hopefully you do enjoy the video. And if you do enjoy the video today, please do consider subscribing. But in order to get this out for you as the football ends on a Sunday, I do have to start recording this at the latest during halftime of the final game. So it's currently halftime in the Chelsea-West Ham game, 1-1. Enzo Fernandez misses a penalty, which doesn't help us decipher what happens moving forward. Jackson looked really good in the first half, as did Chilwell, and so did Raheem Sterling, who we'll discuss a little bit later too. So lots of people on my watch list from Chelsea, and I'd like to see what happens in the second half. But the team in general for this week didn't do particularly well. I'm on 37 points as things stand. Very disappointing, especially in comparison to game week 1. I've not listed my rank now because it's changing so much. Not because it's a red arrow, just because 1 point's different is like 200,000 places at the moment. So rank doesn't matter whether you're 100k or 3 or 4 million. In 1 or 2 game weeks, you can completely flip that. So for the time being, rank doesn't matter, but I think I'm roughly just inside the top 1 million or something like that. It pretty much just came down to Estepinian and Mbeumo smashing it. And really, to make sure I didn't have a terrible week, it really was Mbeumo, because most people have Estepinian in their team. Mbeumo is still a slight differential just because there were so many midfielders to choose from. I'm going to actually start with Mbeumo. A lot of people saying he got very lucky to have 2 penalties because both were very soft, and I will concede, I probably don't think either were penalties for Mbeumo and for Brentford. So yes, he was lucky to get the 2 penalties, but his data has been exceptionally good as well. He's sitting at about a 0.7 XGI per 90 over the 2 first games. And yes, it's a small sample size, but he's getting chances to score goals. And you could say, well, that's Mbeumo, he misses the chances. But then you could say, I suppose he's unlucky in that front, right? He's getting a lot of chances. He's creating chances too. And yes, he got the 2 penalties, but he's also brilliant for minutes. And we know he's going to get a lot of chances throughout the season, even when Tony is back. So I still feel like Mbeumo was the good pick. And I still feel like Mbeumo is the best 6.5. So I'm very happy to have him. Turner was very disappointing. But luckily for me, I've got Pickford on the bench, who was even more disappointing. And maybe Pickford was the wrong choice. They do look like there are probably better keepers to choose from. Everton have been really, really poor in those opening 2 games. So I don't usually just want to make a goalkeeper transfer, but I am potentially considering it. Maybe just to move Pickford on, especially for someone like Sanchez with Chelsea's fixtures coming up. So Turner conceding wasn't great, but at least he outscored Pickford. Chilwell, obviously, it's half-time. Rashford and Fernandez, I've got the Manchester United shirt on, and the reason for that is I don't want to only put the United shirt on when we win. I back my team when we lose. I am a hardcore Manchester United fan. I'll watch all of our games, so it doesn't matter if we lose or win. I will support the boys, but we have been so bad in those opening 2 games. The whole game against Wolves was one of the worst performances I've ever seen. Against Spurs, the first half, and specifically like the first 20 or 30 minutes, we were actually pretty decent. I think we were probably the better team. But for the final kind of 60, 50 minutes, we were absolutely appalling. And Spurs deserved to win. Absolutely. We just didn't finish our chances, maybe robbed of a penalty as well, but we got very lucky in game week 1 with the penalty. So we won't go into all of that. But just to say, I do not mind at all if you want to sell your Manchester United assets. I fully understand why you would want to sell them. I'm not a biased Manchester United fan, by the way, and we'll discuss that a little bit later in the video. Like, I don't have a Manchester United defender because I don't overly trust our defence and I didn't like the fixtures. So I don't just sort of blindly pick Manchester United assets. But with the fixtures moving forward, it maybe is difficult to move them on. And again, absolutely shocking in Game Week 2. And they are eating up a massive amount of your budget. I mean, 17.5 million on Rashford and Fernandes, when there are so many other good midfielders to choose from. I am looking at potentially selling one or both in the upcoming game weeks. And then the front line was pretty poor as well. Haaland, blank him. He probably should have scored at least 1 or 2 chances, and you would expect him to in a normal game week. Salah did outscore him, so if you went for Salah, massive congratulations. That is a win. Obviously, he didn't massively outscore him, and your team's probably slightly more imbalanced than the non-Salah drafts, but it is a win nonetheless, and you did outscore Haaland, so well done for that. And then João Pedro blanking was pretty frustrating, especially because he didn't start. We did know that he would be a minutes risk. It makes him a lot easier to sell him moving forward, but coming off the bench, not doing anything, getting booked, and especially with Ollie Watkins getting an assist as well, I am slightly down. I think Ollie Watkins has got 10 points over the opening 2 game weeks, and João Pedro has 7 points. But João Pedro is 5.5, Ollie Watkins is 8. So I'm actually not too disappointed in my decision to go for João Pedro over Watkins. And I just want to give a shout out to Udogie or Udogie. Everyone pronounces his name differently. I've got no idea at this stage. But really, really attack him. And yes, Spurs aren't the best defensively, but he's getting in such brilliant positions. I could definitely see him being an excellent option at 4.5, and I'm delighted that I started the season with him. So I think he will definitely be coming into my team in the coming game weeks. And if for some reason Saliba, Martinelli, or Saka miss out, I've actually got a really nice sub for Monday night. So that's how the team did. Again, I'm not overly impressed with any of them. Thank God for Brian and Burmo. Let's now move on to what are my early thoughts on what's happened in Game Week 2 and then going into Game Week 3. So guys, this is just a section that I've added into the series this year in comparison to last year. I just give some of my early thoughts on what has happened. Obviously, I want to dissect the data once the data updates, and I'll look into everything in more detail in the Game Week preview video. But these are just some of the things, watching some of the games live, some of the extended highlights too, obviously scrolling through and looking at some of the data that I've seen already on what I think about some of the things that have happened in Game Week 2, again, going into Game Week 3. So starting off with Liverpool, Salah is not the same asset. He's just not. He's not getting as many chances to score goals. He's never been great at taking penalties, but he's missed another penalty. Is he going to stay on them? We don't yet know. He's very creative still. I mean, his expected assists are very, very good, and we saw that in pre-season as well. He got something like 7 assists. But he's not the same asset. He is not worth 12.5. Purely, again, because most of the time you probably want to captain Haaland. And even if you don't captain Haaland, there are other options to choose from. And you need elite goal threat to have someone as a premium price point at 12.5. And he's just not necessarily showing that at the moment. So for me, no, Salah is not the same asset anymore. We'll discuss in the Game Week preview video again later in the week, do I think you should sell Salah? But to be honest, if you can't get to the likes of Jackson, if Maddison is fit, which again we'll discuss in a second, or potentially you don't have Chilwell and you want to upgrade, or there are other options, and you've got Salah in your team and you feel pretty inflexible, I don't mind the idea of selling Salah immediately. I feel like there are better ways to potentially use the budget than to keep all of that money invested in Salah. And the reason for maybe Salah potentially being sold too is if you want to stick with the Liverpool assets, you've got Diaz and Jota, who both look fairly nailed at the moment, and they both look excellent as well. It doesn't look like Darwin is favoured, and Gakpo is dropping into like a midfield role at points. If that is the case, obviously McAllister's sending off might change that. It looks like Diaz and Jota should get a decent amount of minutes, and both Diaz and Jota look really, really good. Their data has been strong from the opening too, so I don't mind the idea of taking a punt there. And I've also got, is Soberslai an option too? He has looked so good in the first couple of games, especially in Game Week 2. I would argue, other than Phil Foden, who we'll discuss in a second, Soberslai was arguably the best midfield performance of Game Week 2. I was very, very impressed with him. And he is getting into some quite attacking positions too. So I like the idea of going for Soberslai if you want to go for a nailed Liverpool attacker outside of sort of Diaz and Jota, and you want to downgrade from Salah. So those are some of my thoughts about Liverpool. And also just to say, they are not a good defence. I would not be having Trent anymore. I would sell Van Dijk if you've got him. And I would target Liverpool as a defence that will concede chances and will concede goals as well. They were 15th for expected goals conceded last season. They are just not a good defence anymore. They are not showing any signs of improving, really. I would definitely be looking to target them from an attacking perspective. You can see here I've put not impressed by Spurs attackers. I know I'm wearing a Manchester United kit at the moment, and we conceded 2 goals, and they had plenty more chances to score. But what I was really impressed with Spurs is actually I thought their defence was good at points, but mainly Sarr and Basuma were just absolutely excellent. They bossed the midfield, and they were creating chances for the attackers as well. But Son just doesn't look, similar to what we said with Salah, Son just isn't the asset that he once was. He's not getting chances to score. He's barely creating as well. I haven't been impressed with Son at all. Richarlison barely touched the ball, came off very, very frustrated early on. I think it was like half time and he'd had something like 5 or 6 touches. I mean, he's just not touching the ball at all. And I wasn't overly impressed with the positioning of James Maddison. Now, James Maddison did leave the stadium on crutches. I'll try to remember to flash the tweet on screen, but he left the stadium on crutches. Apparently, he said this was just precautionary. So again, he could be fit for Game Week 3. But that being said, like, his data from the opening 2 games hasn't been that great. I think there are other midfielders that you could potentially move to for cheaper, potentially with okay fixtures as well. So I've not been impressed with Son, Richarlison or Maddison. I'm not desperately thinking I want to break my team to get any of those in, which is a shame with the fixtures that they've got coming up and considering how attacking Postecoglou's sides are. But I'm pretty happy with Udogie in my team and potentially looking to just move to some of the other midfielders, such as we'll discuss in a second, Phil Foden. I've got here Rashford struggling as the number 9. In my opinion, as a Manchester United fan, Bruno Fernandes isn't the asset you want to be selling at the moment. If you've got Rashford and Fernandes, if Rashford is going to continue in the number 9 role, Rashford's the one to sell. He's just not very good there. And I know his data was actually pretty decent in the number 9 last season. He's just really, really struggling. He's barely touching the ball again, as I said, with the Richarlison section. He's not getting the same chances. And Bruno Fernandes is actually doing quite a lot. His data through the first 2 games, whilst frustrating to own, because he's not necessarily getting the returns, I would rather keep Fernandes and sell Rashford if you're looking to move one on, especially as Rashford is more expensive. Now, the only concern here is that Sancho could go into the sort of false 9 role, which pushes Rashford out to the left. And if that is the case, Rashford on the left wing against Nottingham Forest looks like a great fixture in Game Week 3. So I guess it depends what Ten Hag says throughout the week. But if it looks like Rashford might go back out to the left, I would keep Rashford. If Rashford's going to continue as the number 9, I'd sell him because he's just, in my opinion, he's not a good asset for £9 million playing through the centre. I've put here Philip De Bruyne. Foden was absolutely sensational. Let's ignore FPL for like 10 seconds. That was one of the best performances I've seen from, I suppose he was playing like a number 10 in a long, long time. He was so, so good. He was taking it on the turn, creating chances. I mean, he created something like, I think it was 7 chances, including 1 or 2 big chances in that game. It was a 10 out of 10 brilliant performance from Foden. I don't see as you can drop him moving forward, although this is Pep Guardiola, and potentially they could, but I think Foden's going to get significant minutes this season. It looks like in the absence of De Bruyne, he is going to step up. And I'm excited. I mean, I'm a Manchester United fan, but I can't help but watch Foden and just be excited for him, especially from an England perspective as well. I think he's one of the best players, I said this on Twitter, in world football at taking the ball on the turn and attacking defenders, and he looks so good. The fixtures coming up for Man City are absolutely brilliant. And if Maddison is injured, or if you don't want to take a risk on a Spurs attacker and you do want to sell like your Manchester United attackers potentially, Phil Foden has to be in your consideration. And I said this last week as well. It's not a knee-jerk. His data tends to be pretty good. The fixtures are excellent. And I expect his minutes to be really strong too. So I've got my eye on Foden. Of course, European football will kick in very soon. And once Europe kicks in, maybe we'll see a bit more rotation in the league. But for the time being, you've got to consider Foden as an option. His data strong fixtures are there, and I think he's just an exceptional footballer too. The next point is Mbeumo and Wissa continue to look really good. I spoke about this in the first section. Mbeumo's data is exceptionally strong, even if you remove the penalties. Yes, he's not a great finisher, but the data's there, and he will continue to get chances, and his minutes are just so good. We've seen repeatedly, Wissa keeps coming off early, as do other players in that Brentford attack. Mbeumo stays on the pitch for pretty much every minute, and that is massive, because he scored, I think it was in the 92nd minute, or the 93rd minute in Game Week 2. So staying on the pitch is a massive advantage, and Mbeumo will continue to do so. So I like Mbeumo and Wissa, and Wissa actually took 7 shots in Game Week 2, looked really strong. I think there are definitely worse options than Wissa at that £6 million price point as the forward. And then the final 2 points are just around Villa. Villa looked much better. Obviously, the first game was very, very difficult against a rampant Newcastle. Diaby does look like a bargain at 6.5. He looked really, really good once again, as did Ollie Watkins, to be fair. Obviously, we've seen here now Watkins is no longer in penalties. Is that a good thing? I joked about this on Twitter. No, it's not. Even if he's got a bad penalty record, you would still rather him have the chance for penalties than not take them at all. So I would definitely rather, if I was a Watkins owner, I'd rather him be on pens than not on pens. Is he still worth 8 million despite having no penalties? Potentially. The issue that we've got is that Alvarez has great fixtures and looks pretty good at the moment. You've got Wissa as well, looks really, really strong. And as we'll discuss in the next couple of sections, Jackson, of course, the man on the thumbnail, is going to be a player that a lot of people want too for 7 million. So it's not necessarily that Watkins is a bad option. It's just with some of the fixtures they've got coming up and some of the other players with exceptionally strong fixtures in Wissa, Alvarez and Jackson, I could understand why you would want to sell him, especially without the penalty. So those are some of my early quick thoughts, running through those very quickly on Game Week 3 and sort of what's happened in Game Week 2. Let's now take a look at my team ahead of Game Week 3 and what I plan on using my free transfers on. So going into Game Week 3, the team's in a really strong position. I've currently got 2.5 million in the bank. The team value is rising very nicely, and I've got 2 free transfers as well. If I only had 1 free transfer, I would probably consider rolling it, because Game Week 4, whilst the fixture swing for kind of Chelsea and Spurs is in Game Week 3, and of course they play Luton at home this week, Chelsea, and you want to try and get 2 or 3 assets from Chelsea for that fixture, Game week 4, obviously Manchester United and Arsenal play against each other. So that seems like a week where if you did want to sell the likes of a Martinelli, a Rashford, a Saliba, a Shaw, then that might be a better week to do it than this week where Arsenal have Fulham at home and Manchester United have Forest at home. So if you only have one free transfer, don't be afraid, whilst there is a nice fixture swing this week, to maybe keep it for next week where 2 free transfers might be a little bit clearer where you want to use them. Especially you might get a little bit more information around the Spurs and the Chelsea assets too. For example, if you find out who is on penalties at Spurs in game week 3, that could be very useful going into game week 4. So for me though, I've got 2 free transfers, so I will be using one because I don't want to burn the transfer. The spots where I would potentially consider using a transfer this week, because I've got 10 home fixtures, 11 of the fixtures, all of them are great, and I've got Udogie on the bench as well with a really nice fixture against Bournemouth away, so I don't need to use it, but spots where I'm potentially considering using my transfer. Pickford does look like it was a bit of a mistake. Yes, they looked good in pre-season, and yes, I was expecting Dyche to shore them up at the back and maybe improve them for the better fixtures coming forward, but they just look so bad. And yes, obviously Villa isn't an easy fixture in game week 2, but I'm not convinced by Everton. The thing is, I mean, as I said, I'm recording this during the second half of the Chelsea-West Ham game. Chelsea have just conceded again against West Ham. The real option that I would have if I wanted to sell Pickford is Sanchez. The fixtures are pretty good for Chelsea, but am I that much more convinced by the Chelsea defence? Not particularly. And it is very difficult to try and predict when a goalkeeper will get a clean sheet. So yes, I think there are probably better options than Pickford, and yes, it might have been a bit of a mistake, but do I want to use a precious free transfer on Pickford to another goalkeeper? Maybe not at the moment. I feel like the defence is fairly good at the moment, especially considering I already have a Spurs defender in Udogie on the bench. I've already got Ben Chilwell too. I'll discuss in the next section. I am considering Colwell and Gusto, but I feel like my defence for now looks pretty sturdy. The midfield is where I want to make the most changes, but not this week. Arsenal have Fulham at home. Manchester United have Forest at home. Again, next week, Manchester United and Arsenal play against each other. That feels like the week to start making moves and maybe bringing in the likes of a Foden or a Maddison if he is fit and he's not injured long term. So yes, I want to change some of my midfielders. Yes, I probably don't want the Manchester United and Arsenal double up in the midfield for the next sort of 6 to 8 game weeks, but I don't necessarily need to make the move this week to take out players that I chose for a reason, that have consistently good data with really good home fixtures for other players with other good fixtures. It just feels like a bit of a sideways move that can really backfire, especially because the likes of Rashford, Saka, Fernandes, and Martinelli are better at home. We spoke about this on the deadline stream. All 4 of those assets have better data at home than they do away. So whilst there is that natural tendency to want to sell these players, especially again, if Arsenal don't look great against Palace, which I don't know at the time of me recording this, there may be a want to sell some of those assets, but I'm trying to stay patient because I chose them for a reason. Haaland, I'm not going to sell. I am going to captain him as well. So realistically, the only spot in this team where I feel like it is a good use of one of my free transfers is probably João Pedro. Now, I still feel like João Pedro is great value at 5.6 million. He still should be on penalties, and I still feel like he'll get enough minutes to warrant that price and to have him in your team. But I just think there are 3 other options that I really, really like with better fixtures and potentially slightly more nailed for minutes in Wissa, Alvarez, and Jackson. So those are the 3 I'm currently considering. João Pedro is probably the one that I want to take out. So let's now move on to the next section where I talk about who I think I'm currently thinking of bringing in for João Pedro and discuss why he is currently winning the race there. So as you can probably tell by the thumbnail, and I assume I'll probably put it in the title as well, it is Jackson that I'm currently eyeing up to do from João Pedro. The reason for that is I feel like his minutes are very secure at the moment. I've been very impressed eye test wise. It's a bit of a small sample size to start looking at data really, but the data's not terrible. He's got chances to score, but I've been very impressed. He looks very fit. Looks like he'll get decent minutes. Even I don't think he's going to get tons of early substitutions. I say this, it'll probably come off early in the second half now, but I feel like Jackson is just going to be really good for minutes. The fixtures are excellent coming up, and with Enzo Fernandez missing that penalty, there is a chance, I suppose, that Jackson gets the next one. I've seen a few people surprised that Jackson didn't take them. I think most of us expected it to be Enzo Fernandez, but Jackson could take the next one, and I just feel like the fixtures are just too enticing, especially Luton at home this week is arguably the best fixture in the league at the moment, based on the data we have now. Of course, that might change over the coming game weeks, but it looks pretty good. And I just want a piece of action for that Chelsea attack. I think Pochettino will get them playing better and better football over the coming game weeks, and I want Jackson for that period coming up. But as I said, I still like Wissa. I think maybe because I have Mbeumo, I shouldn't really consider it like this. I've spoken about double ups in the past. I shouldn't consider me owning Mbeumo and buying Wissa as connected things. I think if you think Wissa's a good option in and of himself, you should just buy Wissa and not consider Mbeumo. But I suppose the fact that I've got Mbeumo in there, I worry that, let's say that Brentford just have a couple of off games, all of a sudden that's my 2 attackers that I could potentially differentiate from others, both blanking. So for that reason, I'm a little bit put off of Wissa. Alvarez I love, and Alvarez is probably second in line. If I don't go for Jackson for any reason, I don't want to if he gets injured or anything happens, Alvarez is probably the second most likely to come in for me. I think Alvarez and Foden just look so good at the moment. They're actually playing very well together too. And whilst I do think that Alvarez's best position is essentially where Haaland's playing, I still feel like he's very good playing in those little pockets alongside Foden and alongside Haaland too. Bernardo Silva obviously was suffering with illness, which is why he missed out in Game Week 2. I do just worry once Bernardo Silva comes back, Phil Foden and Alvarez's minutes will drop slightly because I don't think that all of these players can end up playing in the same team. Grealish, Foden, Alvarez, Bernardo Silva, Kovacic, Rodri, Haaland. You've got Cole Palmer to throw in there too. They're not all going to play every single week, but I still feel like Alvarez and Foden's minutes will be some of the most secure in that attack. And Alvarez's data tends to be quite strong as well. He's such an elite finisher too, which is a massive advantage in comparison to someone like a Wissa or maybe even a Jackson. I expect Alvarez to finish most of the chances he gets. So those would be my top three. And Watkins is still an option as well. He's still on my watch list because he is still a brilliant striker. And outside of penalties, his data is strong too. And Villa are a very, very good attack under Emery. So I still think that Watkins is a great pick. And I would, if I owned Watkins this week, I would struggle. I think João Pedro to one of those attackers is a lot more straightforward. Watkins to Jackson is a lot more difficult. Let me know down below if you own Watkins. Are you still looking at making a switch to one of the three that I mentioned? I would find it a lot more difficult, especially with a very okay fixture in Game Week 3 against Burnley. So, yeah, it's easier for me with João Pedro. Watkins is still actually on my watch list, but maybe fourth for all of those forwards. In the defence, Sanchez, as I said, is an option, but I'm not overly convinced by the Chelsea defence at the moment. And the same goes then for Colwill and Gusto. I'm actually very happy with my 5 defenders at the moment. I don't feel like it's a necessity to change any of them. They rotate really nicely as well. So for the time being, I can't really see myself back in a Chelsea defender despite the nice fixtures. I've also got Gvardiol on here. And I would arguably place him ahead of the Chelsea defenders just because Man City are the best defence in the league. I think he'll be relatively nailed. A £5 million City defender that's quite nailed and also has decent a potential assist threat and also threat from corners too. I don't mind Gvardiol. So he would probably be the most likely transfer in if I were to make a defensive transfer this week. As I said, the midfielders is where I do really want to make a move. I'm just really happy with my midfield 5 for this week, but maybe thinking ahead to game week 4, or potentially if I do have an injury in my midfield this week, or just want to make a move and be a bit more aggressive, Diaby and Eze are still great options at 6.5. I still think Mbeumo is the best option at 6.5, but Diaby and Eze are definitely making me consider them. I think especially Diaby, he's basically playing like a second forward for Villa, and he's probably slightly better value than Watkins at 8 million. So Diaby is definitely high up on my list. But the 3 that I'm really considering are Foden, Sterling may be a little bit knee-jerk from what I saw in that first half, and also Maddison as well. Obviously, Maddison would need to be fit, and I need to think a little bit about how nailed I think Sterling is, and whether I want to take the risk on him. But all 3 of these are really, really tempting me in that midfield. Again, probably more so from Game Week 4 onwards. If I were to move for one now, it's my boy Phil Foden. I love Phil Foden as a player. I always have. I owned him for large spells last season. He was the main reason that I got propelled up to 500th in the world at one point, because he got that, again, it was against Manchester United, but he got that 19-pointer, then he got like an 11 and a 12-pointer in 3 consecutive game weeks. He got more than 10 points for me. So I know what Foden can do when he's in a really, really good spell, and he's playing very nice football at the moment. So if I were to make a midfield move at the moment, even if Maddison was fit, to be honest, I'm probably looking more so at Phil Foden, but we do want a Maddison update on his injury throughout the week, and that might make it a little bit easier for those of us that are looking to potentially move to him. So, as I said, for the time being, if I just switched back to my team, this is how the team will look with the potential Jackson transfer. I would bring in Jackson for João Pedro, and assuming there are no price rises for Jackson before I make that move, that would leave me 1 million in the bank because I have João Pedro. I have 2.5 in the bank. So even if I make that move, I'd still have 1 million in the bank, and it would still leave me with 1 free transfer as well if I do want to make a slightly aggressive move to change my keeper or bring in a midfielder. But realistically, I'm looking ahead to game week 4 because that is where a lot of my players have slightly trickier fixtures, and there is a fixture swing for Arsenal. Their fixtures do start to get a little bit more tricky, and even Manchester United's fixtures aren't great as well. So I am really looking at that midfield and thinking, do I want to bring in something like a Maddison and a Foden, again assuming that they are fit and firing, or bring in like a Sterling and a Foden? These are high upside players that I could potentially differentiate and could shoot me up the ranks early on. So that's what I'm currently planning. Let me know what you think of that down below, and also let me know what you are planning for game week 3. So guys, there you have it. Those are my Game Week 3 early thoughts and transfer plans. If you do enjoy this video on a Sunday, please do smash that like button. Let's aim for 2,500 likes on this video. And make sure to subscribe as well. We are on the road to what is now, and this feels crazy to say, 100,000 subscribers. So please do help me get there. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.